Even if you're not interested in anime, you've probably heard of Your Name, one of the highest-grossing anime movies of all time. However, few people know that in 2016, a lesser-known anime unexpectedly surpassed the blockbuster Your Name to win the Best Animated Feature award at the Japan Academy Prize, often regarded as the Japanese equivalent of the Oscars. That anime is In This Corner of the World. Set in Hiroshima, Japan, during World War II, In This Corner of the World tells the story of Suzu Urano, a young girl struggling with daily life while rising above the tragedies of war. However, the film doesn't focus on the intense battles on the front lines filled with fire and death. Instead, it captures the simple everyday lives of ordinary people during wartime, evoking a sense of familiarity and intimacy. Gentle yet profound, melancholic yet hauntingly unforgettable. The story of young Suzu conveys a powerful message about resilience in the face of hardship and hope for a brighter future. So, what enabled In This Corner of the World to surpass a blockbuster like Your Name? Amid a life filled with harsh trials, is maintaining a carefree mindset truly the right way to cope? In today's video, let's step into a corner of the world together to find the answer. From the perspective of Suzu Urano, a small, innocent, and lovable girl, In This Corner of the World draws the audience closer to the lives of ordinary citizens, highlighting the beauty in small, everyday details. Suzu grows up surrounded by the love and protection of her family. That love not only nurtured her into a kind and well-behaved child but also adorned Suzu's soul with a sense of magical wonder. For instance, during one occasion when she got lost in the city, Suzu was carried home by a large man she called a monster, using a giant basket on his back. Or another time, while visiting her grandmother, Suzu came across a werewolf sneaking a bite of watermelon. Instead of being scared, she eagerly cut more watermelon and even left behind a new kimono her grandmother had just made as a gift for her strange new friend. Young Suzu displayed a natural talent for art from an early age. Her vivid imagination and gentle heart gave her drawings a simple charm and pure, bright colors. Once, while collecting driftwood along the shore, Suzu stumbled upon her classmate Mizuhara sketching a picture. Asked to draw for him, Suzu immediately painted a seascape where the waves were playful white rabbits leaping about. Even Mizuhara, who hated the sea because his brother was about to join the Navy, was stunned by the sense of peace and brightness Suzu brought to the otherwise dull and somber seascape. Time passed, and when Suzu turned 18, she received a marriage proposal. Thinking it might be from Mizuhara, Suzu felt a twinge of melancholy upon realizing that the one proposing to her wasn't her classmate but a stranger from Kure. Even so, Suzu didn't turn down the proposal from someone she barely knew. Little did she realize that the man who wished to marry her was the same boy who had once shared the giant basket with her on the back of the monster man years ago. Remembering the image of the little girl from his childhood, Shusaku Hoyo had done everything he could to find Suzu again so he could protect her for the rest of her life. And so, as if bound by a magical twist of fate, the naive Suzu now had to learn how to become a wife and care for her family. Incorporating humorous details into a film with a war theme is no easy feat. Yet, In This Corner of the World achieves this with great subtlety. Stepping into married life in a completely unfamiliar place, Suzu's innocent and somewhat clumsy traits make the audience smile with amusement. She couldn't even remember the family name of her in-laws, mistook the matchmaker for her future mother-in-law, and casually removed her outer clothing during the wedding ceremony in front of both families. This marked the beginning of a series of awkward moments for Suzu and her new family. She wanted to send a letter to Hiroshima but didn't know her in-law's address, and when she tried to help a neighbor carry water, she ended up causing several of the neighbors to fall over. Suzu's clumsiness becomes even more apparent when her sister-in-law Keiko moves in with the family. And like Suzu, who is always slow and absent-minded, Keiko is quick, resourceful, but also hot-tempered. The household tasks that Suzu usually took care of are now handled by Keiko, as she finds it frustrating to watch Suzu do them. Even though Suzu tried her best to change and used all her skills to sew a new style of kimono, her sister-in-law Keiko still criticized her for being too old-fashioned. Exhausted by her clumsy sister-in-law, Keiko suggested that Suzu go back to her parents' house, but Suzu naively thought she was just going to visit her hometown. Her in-laws reluctantly agreed to let her go back to Hiroshima for a few days. Life in her hometown allowed Suzu to let go of the pressures, to the point where she thought being a daughter-in-law was just a dream. On the day she was to return to Kure, she became so absorbed in sketching the city buildings that she missed the train, forcing her to return to her parents' house and wait until the next day. Suzu's parents were at a loss, worried about the family in Kure. Despite her clumsiness and naivety, Suzu's presence brought joy to the Hoyo family. The peaceful atmosphere and Suzu's gentle nature were a stark contrast to Keiko's hot-tempered demeanor, making her niece Harumi especially fond of her. However, Harumi's concern sometimes put Suzu in awkward and funny situations. Worried that her life as a daughter-in-law would make her bald, Suzu was amused when Harumi insisted that her mother buy her some drawing ink to color in the bald spots for Suzu. On another occasion, Suzu found herself in a big mess. While sitting and drawing a picture for Keiko, she was suspected by 2 military officers of being a spy and was escorted to her house. Despite being scolded for hours, the entire family could only stand still and hold back their laughter. It wasn't until the military officers left that everyone burst into tears from laughing. They all tried to remain serious while hearing the accusation that their silly girl was a spy, and they continued to gossip about it all the way through dinner, leaving Suzu pouting in a corner of the HOUSE. Suzu's silly moments never feel annoying to the audience. On the contrary, they are very endearing, making it easy to empathize with a young girl learning how to be an adult and take care of her family. The daily tasks, though repetitive, never feel dull but instead draw the audience into a rhythm of peaceful, comfortable life. Life as a daughter-in-law away from home is difficult, but Suzu still finds simple happiness in the bonds of her new family. Suzu's innocence and charm turn challenges into joyful, memorable moments. In early 1944, American air raids bombarded Japan. People had to dig air raid shelters as the sound of warning sirens echoed day and night. However, amid the smoke and fire of war, love still blossomed like a resilient flower. Keiko once had a happy marriage with her husband, a watch dealer. However, a serious illness took her husband from her, leaving the shop and 2 children for Keiko to care for. Later, the shop was also dismantled for the war effort. Poor Keiko was forced to return to her mother's house. Although she sometimes felt a pang of jealousy watching the young love between Shusaku and Suzu, Keiko's wounds were somewhat healed by the loving embrace of her family. As for the young couple, in order to have a chance to sneak out and take a walk with his wife, Shusaku deliberately left his notebook at home and used it as an excuse for Suzu to bring it to him. Although they couldn't go to the movies or dine at a restaurant as planned because the port was too crowded, the attention from her husband was enough to make Suzu feel happy. Life continued quietly in the small house until one day, the family received news that Suzu's father-in-law had been hospitalized due to a severe head injury. He remained in a coma for several months, and when he woke up, he brought with him bad news: the Japanese sea had been seized. The Yamato, the pride of the Japanese Navy, had been sunk. Suzu gazed toward the sea and sighed, realizing that the rabbits on the waves had disappeared as well. War had taken away the peace that the sea once held. Then, the most painful tragedy of Suzu's life struck unexpectedly. On their way back from the hospital, Suzu and Harumi were caught in a sudden air raid. The 2 hurriedly took shelter in a nearby bunker. After the bombing ended, they left the shelter and continued on their way. Harumi pulled Suzu toward a collapsed wall near the shore to look at the ships she had always loved. Tragically, the spot where the 2 stood turned out to be an unexploded bomb crater. Suzu tried to pull Harumi back, but it was too late. When she opened her eyes, all she saw was her own right arm half severed, and Harumi was gone. Suzu was consumed by agonizing guilt, her ears ringing with Keiko's grief-stricken cries of anger and sorrow. If only she had held Harumi's hand with her left hand, it wouldn't have been her poor, innocent niece who was taken away. The grief had yet to subside, but the air raid sirens kept wailing incessantly. Enemy planes dropped a barrage of incendiary bombs to burn the city to the ground. While everyone else fled, Suzu suddenly lost her temper. Using her broken body, she smothered a burning shell inside the house, as if taking revenge on the bombs that had stolen Harumi from her arms. Everyone around her spoke of good fortune, but Suzu could see no luck in her situation. Her right arm was gone, the arm that in June had held Harumi's hand, in May had drawn pictures of Shusaku, in April had picked dandelions, in March had visited her hometown, and 2 years ago had gathered seaweed. The war not only took a part of Suzu's body but also claimed the lives of her loved ones, forced her to separate from her husband, and shattered the peace that once defined her life. The overwhelming guilt and pain drove Suzu to decide to return to Hiroshima, despite Shusaku's attempts to stop her. Before Suzu left, Keiko set aside her pride and apologized for the harsh words she had spoken after Harumi's passing. Despite her deep, unbearable grief over losing her child, Keiko came to understand that Suzu was just a young woman who had left her family behind, moved to an unfamiliar place as a daughter-in-law, and endured so much pain. Hearing Keiko's heartfelt words, Suzu embraced her and asked to stay, as she had long come to see her in-laws as her true family. Before the pain could subside, the most devastating nuclear bombing in human history struck Hiroshima, causing the sky over Kure to glow white. No one knew exactly what had happened, as communication lines were severed. Survivors of the tragedy scattered in all directions, but many quickly passed away after just a few days of wandering aimlessly along the roads. They left behind a haunting darkness, a grim testament to the brutal judgment of WWII. Suzu's parents passed away, and her younger sister Sumi was exposed to radiation. A once bright future now seemed to wither away. On the streets, crowds of people frantically searched for their loved ones amidst overwhelming despair. The war ended, and Japan surrendered, leaving Suzu filled with anger. Why destroy peaceful lives, take away loved ones, and plunge the people into suffering, only to surrender in disgrace in the end? The meaningless war brought nothing but harsh consequences, turning even a carefree girl like Suzu into someone who despised it. Not only does In This Corner of the World stand out by portraying the war from a fresh perspective, but it also goes beyond the typical tragic narrative meant to elicit tears from the audience. The film's ending does not dwell on the pain of loss but instead focuses on a hopeful future, where those devastated by the war rebuild their lives. In the final scene, a child sits beside a mother whose right arm has been broken for many days, until her body begins to decay. The child wanders aimlessly, until one day, a miracle leads it to meet Suzu and her husband. And so, the broken lives are pieced together. The child meets someone who resembles its late mother, while Suzu finds some comfort after the pain of losing Harumi. Material wealth can make up for physical losses, but only love can heal broken souls. The warm light shining from every house spreads out like twinkling stars in the sky. Beneath each of those roofs, there is hope and a future of warmth and happiness. In This Corner of the World, although set in Japan, resonates with anyone who has experienced the brutal reality of war. And like a sharp blade piercing the heart of the viewer, leaving behind lingering pain, the film is like a caramel candy, both sweet and bitter, gentle and peaceful, yet filled with a deep, lingering sorrow. Each of us has our own battles to overcome every day. Amid the chaos and worries of life, the most peaceful place isn't far, it's a small corner within our soul. Being aware of your circumstances, adapting without becoming dependent, and, most importantly, cherishing the beautiful and precious things around you are the keys to escaping life's relentless storms. We hope that no matter who you are or what you're fighting for, you remain resilient and continue striving for a brighter future like Suzu, like dandelions steadfastly growing through the storms. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. If you enjoyed this, please like and follow us to support our efforts in creating more content.